We celebrate 5th September as Teachers' Day every year. And in the Indian context, the teacher or the guru is a very revered figure. Teachers' Day is also an opportunity for us to give thanks and gratitude to our teachers who play a big role in shaping all of us. But it's also an opportunity, we believe, to take a look at what the experience of teachers has been in the context of the pandemic. It's been the second straight year that teachers in large parts of the country, some states of course have gone back to school, but many still have not. All of these teachers are teaching online. They are figuring out new ways to engage students. They don't always have the devices they require or the internet connectivity or the lesson plans in hand to make sure that learning outcomes are fulfilled. In fact, a survey recently showed that 84% of teachers did not have the adequate devices or were grappling with the new online learning scheme. It's not just that, it's a new world, and it is difficult to engage students who have so much access to information and technology. In that context, we need to really thank and think about what our teachers go through. They're competing not just with search engines, edtech companies, but also WhatsApp universities. So in that context, let's welcome some amazing people from the teaching community, from the educational community, to talk about what the experience has been like, what the challenges are, and what the voices of teachers are as we celebrate Teachers' Day. So welcome to Dr. Urvashi Sahani. She's founding president and chief executive of Study Hall Educational Foundation. Alpana Malik, Director Training and Impact at Teach for India, is with us on the show today, as is Saurabh Taneja, CEO of the Akanksha Foundation. Welcome to all of you. Wish you all a very happy Teachers' Day, and thank you for taking out the time to speak to us on the India Development Debate. Dr. Sahani, I'd like you to start just with your thoughts of the context that I've set at the start of this conversation. What it has meant for a vast majority of teachers to engage with students online, digitally, in the backdrop of a pandemic.
Thank you, Taneja. First of all, happy Teachers' Day to everyone. All the teachers who are watching, all the teachers who are teaching, and who have really been heroes through this long pandemic, 18 months now. It's been a very difficult time for our teachers. They were thrown in the deep end. It was easy for the government to say that now the schools will all go online, and nobody expected it to be so long. They weren't used to it. They had no idea. Even in the best schools, with all the devices, they didn't know what to do. They really didn't know what to do. And along with that, added to that, all their own personal insecurities and fears about the pandemic, about their loved ones, their families, and themselves. This we're talking about private schools, high-end private schools. I'm thinking of government school teachers. I'm thinking of teachers who teach in low-end private schools, where the condition is much worse because they really don't have the devices, and it is not something that is the common currency of their lives to be teaching online. So what happened when it all started? I know from our we have a staff of over 400 in various programs. That we spent a lot of time, first of all, doing some fear management. We needed to bring the fear levels down, the tension levels down, the insecurity levels down. And after that, we didn't jump straight into training them on online education, but we started looking at what people needed, what were their human needs. And even teachers, what they first did was they started to connect with their students. And I'm talking about teachers who were teaching students on the wrong side of the digital divide. How do you get connected? How do you find their numbers? You started with 10, went on to 20, got them to get us more, and so it went on and so on and so on. And then, with children from very poor communities, low-income families, that if there was a device, there was one device, there were 7 users, the father took it to work, and then in the evening, maybe they got it. And sometimes it had internet, and many times it did not. So here were these teachers struggling with themselves, with their own lives, first of all, struggling with their own insecurities, and then really striving to keep their students connected, to stay, to build a line on which to go on to, because there weren't these lines ready-made and available. Thinking creatively on their feet, in their sleep, all the time. So let me just make phone calls. Let me just send WhatsApp messages. Make short videos, 30 seconds, because there's no data. Speak to the parents and say, please, aap kaise hain? How are you? Make friends with them. And then make sure that they give phone to their daughters, particularly. So they faced all kinds of challenges, human challenges, technical challenges, medical challenges, emotional challenges. They were facing them, their students were facing them, their students' families were facing them.
No doubt.
All together, trying to deal with all of that was very challenging. But I must say this for our teachers, for everyone. In fact, I'm saying this, that during this time, the creativity quotient shot up, and so did the caring quotient. Teachers did not just their duty, they went beyond the call of their duty, most of them. And some of them facing great odds. And I'm talking about teachers across the spectrum. Across the spectrum. They all tried very hard. And they tried very much to build bonds with parents, to build bonds with their students, and to provide all kinds of assistance, to help with vaccine hesitancy, to help with information, to connect them with ration schemes, to connect them with government schemes.
Absolutely.
They provide data. So they really went beyond the call, and I want to take this opportunity to applaud all of them, to applaud our teachers. They truly have been heroes.
No, completely. They do deserve to be applauded. It needs to be recognized that they did go beyond. Many went beyond the call of duty, and it wasn't always easy. Teachers, especially in government, led institutions, sometimes are still fighting for the right pay. They're fighting for better facilities, better amenities, and it's not quite fair. I mean, we have a student-teacher ratio of 24:1 in India, which needs to improve rapidly. Alpana Malik, 2 years down the line, what Dr. Sahni has described is the beginning of the pandemic and how everyone was grappling, etc. 2 years down the line, have things improved significantly, or is the whole process sort of in limbo, waiting for in-person school to begin?
Tamanna, for the question. I do resonate with a lot of points that Dr. Sahni also shared in terms of digital access, teacher constraints and training. I would say 2 years now, we are seeing a lot of creativity and solutions come up. I think some of our teachers have figured out how to balance online teaching, some parts of offline teaching. Some of our teachers are making physical worksheets, going to the child's home and distributing it, and then correcting papers. So I would say some improvements have happened, but I would say that's for a very small minority of teachers who have been able to break that barrier, right? At this point, we are seeing that teaching and learning is a immensely social function. Children learn when they have in-person connection. Students learn best when they can see the teacher, when they spend time with the teacher. And we are seeing that that's not happening, especially for many of our younger kids who need that social element, that care and love from teachers. I think some academic needs are being met, but I would say right now the need is, as you said, how do we reopen some elements of in-person school, some elements of in-person gatherings so that teachers can meet them in small groups. I would say currently the other challenges are learning loss has widened actually. So some children who had access to a device and were being taught very well have picked up, have managed to learn their grade level content, but many of our children didn't have access. So if I speak for Teach for India, when we started, 30% of our children had access to a device. We've managed to get 65% after a year's effort. But that still means that there are 30% children who have not had access to any learning. And there are many levels behind currently. So how do we reach those children who are not able to get digital access? So I do think many of our teachers do need to figure out how to reach the children we've left behind so far. And even the children who are joining us right now are coming in at very different places. So you have one child who's gone to school for 2 months. You have one child in a classroom who's attended everything. So how do you balance the different needs of a child of 30, 40 children coming to Zoom, some children trying to figure out how to be on mute or not on mute, some children figuring out how to use the chat function. So the need to do differentiated learning is very high, but it's also very challenging for our teachers right now. So I would say we've seen huge strides for some classrooms and children, but for the majority, the need I think right now is to slowly move to safe in-person teaching and learning to happen.
May I?
You know, we're in that process, and a lot has been written and said about. A lot has been just a minute, ma'am. A lot has been written and said about how a large number of Indian children have just been left out in the dark because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it will take some time to bridge that gap. Yes, Dr. Sahani, you wanted to make a point.
To clarify, by the way, in UP, we actually opened schools on August 16th, 9 to 12, August 23rd, 6 to 8, September 1st, 1 to 5. So now all our children are actually can come to school. Of course, only 50% of the parents have given consent. Our entire staff is vaccinated, of course. And out of those 50%, only 50% are coming. This is for middle class children. Whereas in the low-income communities, much larger outreach, much larger attendance, because it's impossible. They have lost out so much that they are very eager to join back and to once again start learning. They're quite desperate to join. And so there we are doing the staggering of 50% on one day, 50% on the other day.
Yeah.
Actually, we do 50% for 5 days and then 50%. And
No,
most of it is a game. Trying to assess
It's going to be.
trying to do really.
It's going to be a challenge. Yes, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge to get back online. Saurabh, Taneja, from the teacher's perspective, because today is Teachers' Day, and we want to focus on what the teachers are going through. Of course, you need the device, you need the know-how, you need to get the children on devices, but also things like teachers having to pick up how to present an online class. Teachers who are perhaps a little older and not as tech savvy. Do you think that bridge has been covered so far in about 2 years of pandemic, or those who are perhaps not as comfortable with online teaching and with devices and with apps are feeling themselves left behind?
Thank you so much, Tamanna, for that thoughtful question. I would say that the response is fairly mixed. I think if you notice across potentially the high-income private schools, and my mother-in-law is the principal of one of the very prestigious schools in St. Mary's in Pune. She's about 65, but she has been amazing at being able to pick up, all the very tangible skills of facilitating online learning because she had the right kind of professional development opportunity. That is not the case with several teachers from low-income private schools, or for that matter, government schools at all. I mean, when you put people in these mass training programs where you have 400 people joining in a single Zoom session, you can imagine what they would take away. I mean, at Akanksha, even though we have very driven educators and teachers, it was an uphill battle, and you had to really strategize what kind of in-person, what kind of ongoing professional development support they will require to really build up the skills, and it had to be sort of, organized phase-wise. So to answer your question, Tamanna, I would say that it's fairly mixed. I don't think we should assume that our teachers are now ready to pivot entirely and go back to embracing digital once the in-person learning happens. And I do think that, every school system in the country needs to embrace the struggle that will come with it and really tangibly have a strategy for solid professional development. I would say this is an excellent opportunity for our country to reimagine teacher development at scale. I think you cannot realize the vision of new education policy without really thinking about, ongoing professional development of teachers, which was anyway ignored prior to the pandemic. And now with needs of digital integration increasing year on year, the FLN mission coming in, the differentiation that's required, the personalization that's required, I think it's an opportunity for us to think ahead and build off on some of the skills that teachers have acquired, but not to assume at all that this has happened for 95 lakhs for teachers across the country. Not the case.
Okay. Saurabh, shout out to St. Mary's Pune. It's my alma mater as well. So great to hear about the school. But I want to, also get a sense of how teachers have been grappling with the NEP. So if you look at the last 2 years, a paradigm shift on so many levels. So you've had to move to digital learning, you've had to devise syllabus, etc. for online learning, and then you have the new education policy also come in place. It's been now a year old, which looks at very different kind of teaching methods. It looks at, breaking down those barriers between different streams. How has that impacted teachers as well, Saurabh?
So, Tamanna, one of the first things that at least in Akanksha Foundation that we did was to deconstruct the entire new education policy and really work with our teachers to understand what they felt was still within their reach and what is it that they will require far more professional development on. I have to call out, Tamanna, that I think it's still early days for new education policy to actually see the implementation on the ground. It was launched while we were still in the pandemic. And so, it's hard to be able to conclude anything really too soon regarding that. I think what we are learning, though, is that there are 3 broad skills that the teachers will continue to require going forward to strengthen, what the NEP expects. I think the first and foremost is just minimizing the pressure related to content, breadth of the content, and really focus on core conceptual skills, which we are now also talking about as foundational literacy and numeracy. They need to know what those foundational skills are and very, very clearly, measurably defined. Second, they need to be able to teach every child at their level, which many of us call as personalization and differentiation. And third, they need the right resources and professional training to be able to deliver on the first 2. I think if we can just focus as a country for the next 2 years, assuming schools will reopen, on these 3, we would have made tremendous strides on, achieving our NEP. I do want to say one thing, Tamanna, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will concur on this, is just that, perhaps I can, have a far-reaching conclusion here. In UK, there was a study that was done that spoke that teachers were perhaps one of the top 3 professions which experienced the highest level of mental stress. In Akanksha, we have struggled with this phenomena called as compassion fatigue because of all that Urvashi spoke about, which is doing everything under the sun that you are required to because you are now responding to every kind of trauma that the child and the parent is facing. How do we as a country, really think about the mental health for our teachers? I mean, we at Akanksha have begun to provide professional help and opportunities for them to reach out to counselors and therapists to be able to really confide in them and really, work through their own compassion fatigue, without which, how will you ever be able to facilitate students' socio-emotional well-being, right? So I just think that that's an important topic for all of us in the country to speak about for our teachers as we think about the hardcore skills as well, technical skills as well.
I'm so glad you've talked about this, Saurabh, because it's something that no one thinks about. What the teachers are going through, compassion fatigue, as you mentioned, it's a term that not all of us are familiar with, and it's true because the teachers at that point feel responsible for imparting this education against all odds. Alpana, I want to also focus on another aspect, which is how do you keep the students' attention and how do you give consistent feedback on whether they're learning or not? So simple things like correcting tests, are not really happening. You have a broken feedback loop of whether the child is understanding something or not. You don't know if while you are teaching the child is playing a game on their mobile phone, if they have more devices or doing something else or is completely distracted. Has that also been a huge impediment for teachers?
So I can share some of the that we've seen. Like, you're correct. So the videos are off. I don't know whether you're on Instagram or are you like listening. When we ask our children, like, keep your videos on, it's not a very fair request also, because they're struggling with internet bandwidth issues and so on, right? So we've had quite a few challenges within that. I think at the same time, technology has also offered us a lot of creative solutions within this situation. So I've seen some teachers use Google Classrooms very, very effectively. So they run their tests over there. A Google quiz gives you automated results of your children, so you can do personalized tracking for them. So we've seen that work. We've also seen, because of technology, like sometimes fellows are being, like, our teachers are being very creative. So we saw some teachers bring in editors of newspapers to bring awareness on social factors or the news as such. We've seen people get creative in terms of showing demonstrations and online maths much better through games and so on. So I think there are ways to channelize more creativity, because sometimes our teachers are sending simple games for children to, like, try it on their phones, like gamify it, make it really exciting to win something and then come back. We're also seeing a lot of hard work from teachers and children who are taking photos of their work and sending it to the teacher on a WhatsApp group, and the teacher is leaving voice notes saying, this is something that you did really well, but maybe you can improve that. All of this is possible when you have smaller ratios. So you did mention that our ratio is like 1:24, but in low-income schools, we see ratios of 80 at times. So a teacher is trying to cater to 80 kids or 60 kids, in which they're doing it batch by batch, and which is where we've seen like some teachers giving voice notes to every child in a out of 60 students, sending a voice note to every child. Sometimes we're sending a voice note to a parent saying, can you please make sure they have done their workbooks or worksheets properly? So we are seeing some progress. I do think, coming back to like the teacher training piece, right? I think if you are tech savvy and you can figure out, you will go out and look for online apps and so on to engage your kids. But many of our teachers actually don't know all of that. A recent Hindu report suggested that 1 in 4 teachers in India have been trained or received the professional development for blended learning or online learning. Now, that number just does not play out well for our students and teachers, right? So how do we think about really equipping our teachers to do that? And I believe that we need to mirror some things that we want for our children. So if we want socio-emotional learning for our children, we want them to get feedback correctly, we want them to learn in fun and engaging ways, we need to do the same for our teachers so they can learn from us and apply it in their classrooms. So just thinking about how do we improve our teacher training across so that teachers experience the kind of learning environment that we want to create for our children.
Dr. Sahni, to round up, what would you like to see as an educationist in terms of policy support, in terms of governmental support for our teachers?
Thank you, Tamanna. I just want to add to what both Saurabh and Alpana said in their comments. What we started was regular Dukh-Sukh meetings with our teachers, where they could just talk about their own experiences and what they were going through. Many of them are women, and women have a double whammy. When they're at home, working from home is not something the families understand. They feel that they should be doing that and be taking care of them. And so they were really under stress. So that we set up a grief counseling cell, so that they could relieve their own stresses. In terms of government support, Tamanna, we should be thinking like this, that the government can actually pick up many of the policies, many of the practices that organizations like ours have been practicing and that we find very useful. They deliver results. What the government can start doing in terms, what I would like to see, I would like to see a government that takes education very seriously. Right now, there's a huge amount of apathy, NEP notwithstanding. And that is why with government school teachers, we work with them. time we are partners like you, Saurabh and Alpana. But we found for a long time they did nothing. And that was because they were waiting for instructions. The instructions hadn't come. And also to expect that an apathetic system will suddenly become very active, I think that's a long stretch. So what I've noticed is that when there is a strong political will, I would like to see a very strong political will to implement the new education policy. Let's just take that. If we can just do that much. And I would like to see a very strong executive skill, a happy marriage between the two, where there is, and I'm talking really about government-driven schools. Private schools, private organizations are taking care of their own. Of course, there's a wide range in that too. But they're a caring bunch and they're looking after their own. But the government school, the scale is so large. My God, we have over 110,000 schools that we're talking about. Huge, right? That it's so large. But if it is decentralized, if we become more caring, serious system.
Yeah.
And I've noticed the political leaders,
Right.
very strong approach that no, we want this to happen. It does happen. It percolates. Teachers they put accountability systems in place. And now there are. In UP, there's the Prerna app, which took a long time deciding. But the teachers have started responding to that. Initially, there was a huge amount of resistance to that. They didn't want the monitoring. Secondly, making sure don't have non-teaching duties.
All right.
It is a system that is teacher-friendly, that is student-friendly, and that
No,
sends the message
absolutely.
very clearly that we care about our
You
children.
know,
we
that's
want
that's
them
a,
to
that's a
learn.
great
We think
point. That's a great point for government teachers. Yes, for that's a great point for government teachers. We shouldn't pile on non-teaching duties as well. I will have to wrap it up there, but I want to thank all of you for joining us for this great conversation. Wishing you all and all our teachers out there a very happy Teachers' Day. And just a note, even for the wider community, with teachers having to teach online, they've effectively entered your home. So parents, family members are all privy to what is going on in the classroom. Don't use that to sort of sit on the teacher's head and tell him or her what to do. It is still their private space. So just on that note, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the discussion this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.